In this video, we will show you how to replace your front wheel bearing assembly on this Chevy Silverado. This will be located behind your front wheel. Let's get into it. Okay friends, let's get started on our job. The first thing we need to do is safely raise and support the front of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. Once you've done so, continue on to removing your center cover if you have one with a 22mm socket. With that out of the way, we'll continue on to all 6 of our 22mm lug nuts and then remove the wheel. Now that we've completed that, we can start removing the caliper from the bracket. To do that, you'll find that you have 2 T55 torque screws holding the caliper in place. We'll remove those. A quick inspection of that, we'll slide it back in there temporarily. Let's get these out of here. A quick inspection of each of these. If it looks like they're rotted and damaged in any way, it's a good idea to go ahead and replace them. We'll clean these down, give them a close inspection, and set them aside. Take hold of the caliper and carefully remove it from the area. Now we can get the brake pads out of here. Ours are frozen in place. Now when you have your brake pads out of there, it's important to give them a close inspection. If they look like ours do here, it's a good idea to go ahead and replace the pads and rotors. I'm going to do that. Let's continue on. With the pads removed, we'll continue on with removing the bracket. To remove the bracket from the steering knuckle, you'll find that you have 2 18mm headed mounting bolts. We'll remove the pair. Quick inspection of that hardware. Start the first one back in, just a couple threads. Continue on to removing the final mounting bolt. We'll hold the bracket just in case here. Inspection, set it aside. Remove your brake rotor from the area. With the brakes out of the way, we can continue on to removing the wheel bearing. Follow the ABS wire all the way up to its connection point up above the strut tower. For this, you're going to find that you have one locking tab. Go ahead and carefully pull that out of place. Give it a quick inspection for corrosion. Just use my pocket screwdriver. You can also use your finger if necessary. Wiring harness up here. Now we'll continue on with a small prying device. You can use a small pry bar, screwdriver, or a trim tool. Dislodge that electrical connector from up along the top here and make your way all the way down to the wheel bearing. Slide this out of here. With the ABS wire completely dislodged, let's make our way along the backside of the knuckle. Along the backside of the knuckle, you're going to find that you have 3 15mm headed bolts that hold the wheel bearing to the knuckle. Let's remove all 3. Inspect that mounting hardware, replace it as necessary. We'll start this back in just a little bit. Remove the other 2. With the majority of the bolts removed, one still intact, just a couple threads, we'll continue on with lightly tapping on the bearing to remove it from the knuckle. Typically, some vibration will help. You can either tap on this area with a hammer, driving it away, or use an air hammer along the backside, making sure that you do not cause any damage. Take hold of the wheel bearing and the backing plate. Remove it from the vehicle. Go ahead and remove the backing plate from the back side of the wheel bearing. We'll give the backing plate a close inspection, clean it up. You will be reusing this. Once you have the wheel bearing out of there, you need to continue on to cleaning and inspecting the mounting area. Of course, we do have the base where the bearing will press up against, but have a look on the inside here. You don't want to leave any of this inside there. Go ahead and scrape it out of there. You could also use a wire brush if necessary. Now that we've got that clean, we'll pay attention along the outer portion here, and it only makes sense to make sure you clean up the rest of the knuckle as well if it looks like this. Now that we have this area cleaned up, let's use a little bit of copper anti-seize along the mating surface. Use a gloved finger to spread that out as needed. Okay, now it's time to prepare to install our brand new front wheel bearing. When we go to put this in position, let's pay attention to our cleaned backing plate and our threaded mounting bolts. You'll find that I applied a thin amount of blue thread locker to each one of these mounting bolts. You want to have it aligned in this position. To start, we'll take the wheel bearing ABS wire and slide it right on through the back side of that backing plate. Now that we have this aligned, we can continue on to putting it in position on the steering knuckle. Like I said, aligning those mounting bolt holes. Along the back side, we're going to be installing each of our 3 mounting bolts. Go ahead and start them in by hand and snug them up. Once you have all 3 of those bottomed out, torque them to 133 foot-pounds. Let's continue on with our ABS wire. Press it into each one of its securing position. Give it a wiggle. Make sure it's completely secured as you continue on. We want to make sure we bring it underneath the flex hose here. This is going to come across. Along the top of the control arm, you're going to find a port for this to fit into. We'll just slide that right on in. The next one will go right up along the top area here. I'm just going to feel along the top for the hole. Slide that right in. Continue on with your ABS wire. That's going to make its way right up on top of the tower here. We'll connect in the electrical connector and then, of course, press it in and make sure it's completely secured in place. Listen for a click. Give it a tug. Make sure it's secure. Let's use some anti-seize on the mating surface. On the back side of your brake rotor, you're going to want to make sure you clean up that mating surface so it's a smooth surface like this here. Let's install the brake rotor. We'll hold that in place with one of our lug nuts. Let's get that bracket installed on the knuckle here. Start in each one of your 2 caliper bracket bolts, snug them up, and torque those to 129 foot-pounds. Now it's time to install our brake pads. When you go to install these, it's the same process for one side or the other. Just slide it into position here. Just roll it in. Make sure once it is in place, it can move around. If your brake pads have to be hammered into position, you're going to have a braking issue. There we are. With the pads in place, let's pay attention at that caliper one more time here. We're going to apply a thin amount of high temperature caliper lubricant to each one of our 2 caliper pistons. Once you've lubricated those, make your way to each of these 3 ears. We're only lubricating the areas that touch up against the brake pads. Slide your caliper in place. Align it with each one of your slider pin ports. If you find that either of your boots are peened over, go ahead and straighten them out. Once you've done that, we'll continue on with your 2 slider pins. Lubricate the shafted area and apply a thin amount of blue thread locker to the threaded area. Go ahead and start in each of these by hand. Snug them up and then torque them to 80 foot-pounds. One last quick inspection while we're in this area and we can reinstall the wheel. After you've bottomed out the lug nuts, get the wheel safely back down on the ground. Once the wheel's on the ground, we'll torque each of these lug nuts to 140 foot-pounds in a crisscross manner. If you have a center cover, install that now. To install your center cover, pay attention along the back. You'll find that you have 6 of these little black covers that will align with each one of your lug nuts. When you install these, go ahead and do it by hand. Never use an impact wrench because you will cause damage. Okay friend, we showed you how to install your front wheel bearing on your vehicle. At this point, take your vehicle for a road test, listen for funny noises and an ABS light. Aside from that, thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.